Well, hello, welcome to another Guns Contractors video. I'm on my way, I guess you could say driving home for Christmas, rather than playing a bit of Chris Rea, which, you know, it would go down well, wouldn't it? But just thought I'd kind of think really about how 2024 has been and what might be coming in 2025. You know, as a business owner, always got to kind of have a look to the future and what we might be doing in the future and where things might go for my business and the industry in general, because there are increasingly some big, I guess, changes that are potentially coming to the industry, and I wonder whether they will or maybe won't affect me. Hopefully positively, of course. That's always the hope, that they're going to have an impact on the business. But 2024, I've found, I think I did my last sort of update of things when we were combining, so that would have been back in probably late July, August time. It's been a very different year for me, and I lost a lot of work that I had historically had in schools, mostly because, you know, they just stopped spending really. I think the world has changed for them, and they're gonna, I think it'll all come back, and it's starting to come back. I've done a little bit of work back in a couple of schools, sort of in autumn and early winter, which is good to see. But ultimately, I think the world has changed there. It sounds like the VAT on school fees, which has been the main government, I guess, policy that has changed the work that I was getting, actually is going to end up with a bit of a windfall for some of these schools, because they'll be able to claim back some of the historic VAT that they have spent, up to something like, I think it's on a sliding scale, but something like up to 10 years, which is absolutely crazy really. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there and what effect that has, and whether that'll mean that there'll be a whole load of investment or not, in the kind of work that I do. Typically found a car at a very tight spot. He's got out of the way. So there's the potential for that work to really come back online, quite significantly, and actually these schools will be able to accelerate their expansion or investment plans. Yeah, that will be interesting to see whether that does come to fruition. I'm very much someone that sort of thinks, well, you know, don't count your chickens before they've hatched, but yeah, there should be some good news there. So that'll be interesting to see what happens in 2025. I've been pricing a whole rake of work, absolutely tons of work, for 2025, and I haven't got everything penciled in exactly, but you know, it's looking like well into the summer at the moment that there is work, there are projects on the go. So, you know, that's great news really, to be sat here in December 24 thinking, well, I'm talking about booking work in now for September next year. Things can change and jobs can come and go, of course. I never again, you know, you sort of hope that things will work out as they should, but they might change. But yeah, it's been very, very strong this last autumn for pricing work, and I'm still pricing work, which is good. So things I think should be better in 2025, certainly for what I'm seeing. It'd be interesting to hear what other people are finding as well in the game. So quite how that's going to affect my expansion plans and what I plan to do. I think I'm going to keep hold of the kit that I've got for now. It looks like a lot of my machines will be busy again, and have been, you know, this sort of past couple of months really in autumn and into early winter. So I think I've got a good range of machines. There was one point I was looking at maybe selling my roller or maybe the 18Z, but I've decided I'm going to keep hold of those. I think there's enough potential future work about to warrant having that range of kit, and when you're on priced work, the ability to use different machines or as I have been doing, leave one on a job somewhere has been a real benefit. So yeah, I'm going to keep hold of what I've got, I think, and that does include the the 3CX for now. We'll see what the projects actually. Some of these jobs I've priced at, a couple of them are quite big, and might be able to justify the possibility of getting a bigger backhoe, or going down the 4CX route, or just changing the good old girl that I've got potentially. But ultimately there is nothing wrong with this machine. It's proving itself more and more all the time, every time I use it. So it's a tricky one. It'll be a lot of money to invest in a new backhoe, and there are some huge advantages to the new machine. But also, when you're looking at sort of probably a £60,000 investment on top of what I own here and I'm sat in now, does it bring £60,000 worth of value? And that is I'm not sure. It's harder to justify. So we'll need a couple of the big projects for next year to launch, and then we might have a bit more confidence about that. But there is also this wider thing going on in a wider environment, I guess, of what the government are looking to do with these houses. And they want to build, the target we're told is 1.5 million homes by 2029, essentially, right? Which would be the next election year sort of thing, the end of the parliament, they're saying. So 1.5 million homes. Now, that's about, we're a year in already nearly, aren't we? That would mean around, so 4 years, 375,000 a year that would mean. And let's face it, that target is it's a lot of houses. We're currently building just over 200,000 houses a year. I think it was 190,000, I think. Well, no, where was it? I think it's just over 200,000 from what I can remember. I did look the figures up, and they're quite widely available. That we built like in the last year. That's completions of new dwellings, what they call new dwellings. And that could be a mixture of flats, houses, whatever. But just on the houses thing, I think back in 1968, which was arguably the peak of the last sort of housing boom as such, remember we had a lot of Irish over working in the trades, a lot of which have stayed and have became a staple for our industry, really, and built an awful lot of our housing and infrastructure over the years. We built in that time, I think 1968 was sort of the peak. We built 416,000 new homes that year, which is, shows it's achievable, doesn't it? It does show it's achievable. But the world was very, very different back then, and I do wonder whether in the modern day we are certainly going to have some challenges to meet these targets. Labour shortages are obvious, number one. Huge labour shortage really already in the industry, let alone to essentially double our output, which is almost, we've got to build 50% more again on what we're currently building, haven't we? Or maybe more than that, because as the target gets closer to to 2029, and it's going to take time to get some of these projects through planning and mobilise them, etc. The target actually gets bigger, doesn't it? So, it's 375,000 every year if we do it over 4 years, but next year we're unlikely to build 375,000 houses, are we? So, that puts the onus then on the remaining years, which it's a big ask. We are almost doubling our output, really, aren't we? And the workforce is only diminishing as people continue to retire, really, and it puts the onus on the rest of us, I guess, people like myself. Will this affect me as a small contractor? Will people be wanting to hire me and my services to do a job? And I'd like to think so. It should, in theory, mean a bit like what happened with COVID, where demand went up, that we can charge a bit more money. No doubt things will cost more as well, because the second massive problem with building these houses is materials. And let's not forget, bags of cement were pretty rare at one point. Very rare, in fact, during COVID. Bags of plaster. That was a lottery trying to get hold of I remember when you could only pick 5 bags of cement up at one point. That was hard work, trying to keep projects going. I had plenty of work, couldn't get any cement. It's a fundamental building material, isn't it? So, let alone the rest of the stuff. And that was just from a boom in the private, improvements, home improvements market, really, more than the house building. House building actually went down slightly. I think 2018 into 19 was our strongest year, probably for the last, since 2007, I think, when you look at the figures. So pre what I call the recession. Of course, I've only lived through that recession, really, so that's the recession I go back to. There have been worse ones before that, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. Will this potential, if the government they have to borrow a lot of money to do this and get housing associations building and local authorities again, because back in 1968, whatever it was, the year I quoted, the boom year, I think over 50% of the houses were local authority houses back then, and private basically made up the other 50%. There were no housing associations really then. Now housing associations make up about 10%, I think, something like that. These are off the top of my head, so please do go and look these figures up, because it does make for some interesting reading. And like basically 88% of the remainder is private. And local authorities build a tiny amount of houses a year, like 4,000 or something of the total over 200,000 houses. So really, the local authority stuff, that's the only way you're going to get a lot of this built, because I just can't see the private builders wanting to build local authority or housing association properties. It's not in their nature. They want to build private houses and make the most money they can on the land value that they've bought, which they are ultimately businesses, aren't they, at the end of the day? But they don't employ any construction people anyway. They're all just essentially shell management companies. So it will come down to people like you and I watching this video to partly achieve this. And what I can only see as another huge draw on labour from overseas, because I can't see how else we're going to have the labour pool to do this. You look at how Dubai and the Arab Emirates and places, they build these massive projects. There's a huge amount of Indian, African labour over there. Quite a lot of guys, of course. I know some people who have gone over from the UK and managed those jobs. A lot of managers and people like that from England. Not so many on the workforce, but yeah, huge sort of foreign workforce for those projects. And I think that's the way it's going to have to be for us. Surely, I can't see how else it's going to do it. Now, of course, the question is on the business side: will that mean that rates actually stay the same or go down, because there then be sort of an influx of cheap labour potentially, or cheaper labour, or labour willing to work for less money? I don't know. It will be really interesting to see if that ends up happening. Don't know. We'll have to find out. But I look at things and I go, well, it can't be a bad thing for business, surely, because demand across the industry is going to go up for people that can work with their hands and have a trade and can build something. Infrastructure will have to get bigger. We need more sewage plants, more water reservoirs, more electricity networks and generation, of course. It's not just about building these houses and plonking them wherever they end up going, which is all they're talking about at the moment. But it will, those of us in high-vis will become pretty expensive commodities, I hope. So I don't know, my future outlook, as a guess, complete guess, is that I think it will be a positive thing on for those of us who are tradesmen. Whether we do or don't work in the house game actually ourselves, because these big projects, they always draw the big boys to actually do the work, but it means that the smaller work that these other contractors would otherwise be doing, there's plenty of that for the smaller guys to take up. And it may well be as well that there comes a day where they start employing good old owner drivers again on these projects, because they struggle to find their own labour themselves. who knows? Who knows? Or it could go the other way, and there could be a huge influx of I guess cheaper labour, train them up, and yeah, get them out on hired machines. Maybe that's the way it'll go. Technology will play a part, because of course GPS, in theory, better smart design, and the BIM, essentially, building information modelling, should in theory mean that there is slightly less, I don't know about less skill, but it should be a smoother workflow, in theory. I don't actually think we're quite there yet with all of that stuff, and yeah, I do wonder whether it's quite as good as it's. I know it's possible, and it's possible to do this idea of designing something and firing that to the machine, and that then being able to, people like me would be able to go and just build it without any drawings and everything. It's all in your machine and your tablet. I get that, and it is possible, but so many changes and variations I find in the construction game that just hamper that. It makes it rather difficult to keep. As soon as you make one change, that model is outdated, and it needs updating, and keeping on top of all of that, checking accuracy, it's an ask, and it requires a different skill. That's the thing. It's not the same skill that you had before. It's a different skill. Puts a lot of onus on operators as well, because you're almost doing part of what your site engineer would otherwise have done previous. So it's a very different world. But anyway, they're my initial thoughts. We'll see where 2025 goes. I'm hoping it's going to be a good year. 2023 was a good year for me. 24 has been a bit of a kind of break-even, survive year, to be honest. But I'm hoping. I think things are looking up for 2025. So let's hope that is the case. Either way. I hope you've enjoyed my rambling thoughts. I'm always keen to hear what other people have found and how things are going, because in different sectors, I appreciate, very, very different. So yeah, hope you all have a good Christmas break anyway, and yeah, don't drink too much, don't eat too much Yule log, Christmas pudding, mince pies, and we'll get back to it in early January. Have a good break, everyone. Catch you later.